Hello and welcome to haQ. My name is Jakob, I'm your host, and you're watching a hack vlog. In this vlog, I'm going to be talking about a live performance video that I published not too long ago. It's called A Wish. I'm using Animoog and Fingertip MIDI HD in that video. So if you haven't seen that video, then I suggest you click the card popping up in the upper right corner and go to that video and then come back to this one if you want to know how it was all made. You see, there's a lot more going on under the hood of both iPads, and I also had to work quite a bit on the audio afterwards because of the nature and characteristics of the bell sound, which is the most dominant one in that whole performance. Right, so let's start with the left iPad. By the way, that particular iPad is an iPad Mini 1. You can clearly see Animoog running, but it's loaded inside of Audiobus. Before I get into how I'm processing the sound using the FX, I want to start by talking about Animoog. The reason why I chose Animoog for this is because, well, I kind of know the synthesizer, and I wanted a pad that wouldn't be too crazy, so I just wanted some slight timbral changes over a longer period of time. You see, the way that Animoog works is you load up 8 different timbres, and then you've got this animation thing in where it goes through all the timbres. So it's basically a wavetable synthesizer. So what I did was I began with loading up only sine waves and then adding a few different timbres after that in different spaces. And then moved on to animating the orbit of the wavetable player head, which I call it because it basically is, until I had the pad sound you can hear inside the video. It's quite a simple sound, and that's exactly what I wanted. A simple sound with a big reverb on it. And then we get to the FX part. So I used AUFX PEAKQ on that Animoog sound to filter off the bottom because I didn't need that for my track. I wanted the sound of this art piece to be brittle and very glistening, glitterish. I wanted it to remind me of snow and frozen lakes and frost and stuff like that. Now, I did find an annoying frequency around 1000 Hz, so I had to remove that before I could move on with the next part, because after the equalizer I wanted to put a reverb there, and so I naturally went for AUFX space. And if you look at the settings here, the room space and the scaling is very large, and that's exactly what I wanted. Big, wet reverb. And so I had to sculpt that a little bit too, just to get that reverb to the right, get it to the right spot in my comfort zone when it comes to what I like listening to. I think I spent maybe half an hour just trying around different settings and listening to it through 3 types of headphones and also through a pair of my old studio speakers that I have in my living room. And that's a problem because my living room space is not set up for professional audio referencing situations. It sounded quite good to my ears, but at that stage, when I was done with that, I already knew that I was going to have to do some work on the final audio after the session was done. And boy, was I right. Now, before we jump out of this iPad and into the next, I want to show you this in Animoog. You see, Animoog has this scaling mode where you can just choose the notes for your own scales. And I don't want to think about what I'm doing when I'm performing my music. I just want to play my music. So I go out of my way to make sometimes very complex build-ups just to end up with a session in where I only have to use 2 fingers to play just a couple of notes. And since I don't know music theory, I can't tell you what the scale is. It's basically a scale built out of 4 notes. That's just what I needed for this session. And I also would like to add that this session is not synced. Didn't need to be. It's just a freehand playing, and I wanted the tempo to be my own. Right, so that's what's going on inside that iPad. And then all that processed audio goes out of the headphone port into a Behringer UCA 202, connected to a USB 3 to Lightning connector that is then connected to the iPad on the right, an iPad Mini 2. So let's dig into that iPad now. And that beautiful interface that you can see with those red squares on it is Fingertip MIDI HD. And so that means it doesn't produce any sound by itself. It has to work with another app that can produce sound and receive MIDI, of course. And in this case, the bell sound, that beautiful glistening, very wintry bell sound, is something I made for a preset pack that I gave away some time ago for Propellerhead's synthesizer Thor, one of my most favorite synthesizers. There's like 64 presets and they're all based on bell sounds. And the first sound you can load in that preset pack, the absolute first sound, is what I'm using. Fingertip MIDI is just sending out note data into Thor, and Thor is running in the background. Now I just want to show you one thing with Fingertip MIDI. Now you cannot change the root key inside Fingertip MIDI Pro, but there's a lot of scales in there, and you can see those scales if you go into settings and turn on the chord note mode. It will just display the actual chord on the left side and then all the notes inside that chord on the right side, well, on all the blocks that you can play. And every time I open up Fingertip MIDI Pro, I kind of always load up Propellerhead's Thor, and then I go through all of the scales until I find a few scales that I like, and then I use that for my music. Now it's kind of quirky because you can quantize Fingertip MIDI to a tempo, and I am doing that. You can turn that off, so you can play it freehand, or should I say free finger, but I usually have it on because when I play it with the quantization on, interesting things happen with the melody and some notes gets skipped, and I just like that randomness that comes from it. But it's random in a very controlled manner, so it's not like notes are going everywhere. It's just that some notes are skipped, and that creates some interesting melodies depending on how fast I'm dragging my finger over all the pads or boxes. If you're listening to the performance, you can hear that it's not perfect. And I've got a different rhythm for every time I play a chord line. I just wanted this piece of music to be alive and not so controlled and machine-like. Less of a Terminator, more of a... I wanted to rhyme there. I couldn't find any good words. Right, Fingertip MIDI in the foreground, and in the background I've got Audiobus loaded. In the input slot, Thor, and in the FX slot you got Chrystaline by Holderness Media. Chrystaline is a shimmer effect. Now the thing is, you can't really hear that shimmering effect that well. I pulled down the blend mode for that effect, and then I forgot to pull it back up again, so it can't really be heard, which is too bad because it was a beautiful sound. So what you hear in the actual audio doesn't really represent what I wanted it to be like. So I basically just messed up, and then I ran with it anyway. So that audio going from Thor through Chrystaline without the blend mode on, and then into AudioShare. And as you can see, I've got 2 lanes loaded, so the second lane is just taking the audio from the Behringer UCA 202 that I've got my left iPad connected to with Animoog, and it's just running cleanly right into AudioShare. And so all of it is being recorded in one go from both iPads at the same time. Now afterwards, I sat down listening to this thing for 2 hours maybe or more. And I already knew from the beginning that I would have to work on the audio using Igor Vasiliev's AudioMastering app. Usually I do slight changes to my audio, like just keeping something in check with a compressor or a limiter, because I want my viewers to hear what stuff actually sounds like. But this time I was building a piece of art. I was building an emotion that I had. As I wrote in the description box under that performance video, I was watching my beloved snow just melt away, and it always saddens me when I see that snow just disappear. And that's why I did this performance. I just wanted to be happy. I'm gonna put links to every app and everything else I'm talking about here down in the description box, so you can find all of that stuff if you want. Right, so when that audio was recorded, I actually didn't send it to AudioMastering straight away. What I did at first was I pre-processed the audio inside AudioShare. you've got this FX chain with an input, and then you've got 3 slots for effects. And this is how I process the sound before I even sent it to the mastering app. So in the first slot, I've got AUFX dub. It's a delay, and I use that just to get the bell sounds to bounce around in the stereo field. The next FX app that I'm using for this processing chain is AUFX PEAKQ, and it's the equalizer once again. And in it, I pulled down on 2 annoying frequencies. As you can see, there are 2 dips in here. You see, bell sounds have some very specific harmonics going on in them. That's what makes them sound like bells. And usually when you look at bell sounds inside a spectrum analyzer, you can see these mountains of sound just spiking through everything. And if you remove them because you think they are annoying, you're gonna change the sound of that bell drastically, because those mountains are what's giving the character to these bell sounds. Remove it, it doesn't sound like a bell anymore. I also had to shave off quite a bit of the top because it was a glistening sound and it was just glistening too much. And remember, I'm processing the entire audio, so it's the audio coming from Animoog and from Thor, all of the effects and everything into AudioShare. That's the audio I'm processing. And if you're wondering, why didn't you just put these effects into the actual chain when you were recording it? Well, because my iPad Mini 2 couldn't handle that stress. Just too much resources needed to run a session like that. So I have to do things in steps instead. Now, all of that EQ tweaking was also to prepare the entire sound for another reverb on it. And I'm using AUFX Space as the last plug in that chain. And once again, I'm maxing out the settings for the size and scaling of the reverb just to make my sound really, really wet. You can see that the damping is pretty high. I usually do that when I do big reverbs, like a high dampening on the reverb tail. Because if I don't, just try it out yourself. Do these settings if you've got AUFX Space or some similar reverb app, and then remove the dampening and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just out of control. Can't work with that sound. Unless you're into noise and stuff like that, then that might be desirable in your case. Right, so are you tired listening to me talk about this yet? Because I am. I'm sorry, but we're not done yet. Now, that sound has been through a lot, and it's gonna go through a lot more. Right, so when I'm done processing this sound with all these new effects and equalizer settings on it, I get a new audio file, and that audio file gets sent into Igor Vasiliev's audio mastering app. And so this is what it looks like. I started up by EQing the sound. I spent hours on this. I listened and I listened and I listened and I listened and I processed and I listened and I processed. In the end, after all of that tweaking, what I found worked best for me was this curve for the first process. That's right, I processed this sound 2 times inside audio mastering. In my first processing run, I just equalized my audio and then I used a compressor on it to hold some peaks down. Right, so have a look at this equalizer curve. It's a crazy curve, because I've put a mountain around the bass area where I normally would cut off some of the bass. But for this track, I just thought it sounded better. Even though there's a lot of bass in there, those bell sounds, they cut through everything in the high frequencies. Now look further up here, you can see these peaks, and these peaks are made by the bell. And they're really, really strong. Really strong. You gotta keep in mind that I've already put a dip in the equalizer when I processed this audio inside AudioShare with an equalizer. And even though I did that, we still have these peaks. The sound is that strong in that frequency area. And so there's a lot of dipping being made here. I'm dipping all over the place from 350 Hertz and upwards. And after doing those settings, I exported it and then opened it up again. I'm still inside audio mastering here. And here's the next EQ curve. And it's pretty crazy. Those bells are very rich in high frequencies. This is not how my EQ curves looks like normally when I process my music. But I cannot even begin to emphasize how much I had to rethink the way I work frequencies when using bell sounds like this. Wow. That finished audio then got sent to my iPhone 6, where I had the footage of this performance that I recorded, and then I just had to sync it up. visually using my eyes, as I explained in an earlier video I made about a Troublemaker live jam I did. So the actual video didn't take that long to do because I didn't have to edit or anything like that. And that's why I put the candle in there too, to have something else being animated in the picture while I'm playing. I'm quite satisfied with how the whole video and everything just ended up being in the end. Oh, making this sound weird. There you go. From beginning to end, how it was all made. So the most of the time I spent on this was actually just on the audio and processing the audio itself. Building the actual setup took almost no time at all, because I already had a clear picture of what I wanted. Right, so there's gonna be some outtakes at the end of this, so keep watching. And speaking of watching, thank you so much for watching. All comments and ratings are very much appreciated. I've also got a Patreon page, so if you want to support creativity and good content here on YouTube, if you want to see more of these videos and see me keep doing these videos, then consider joining up on Patreon. If that isn't your cup of tea, then you can always share my videos, talk about... I always mess this up. You can always talk about my videos, link to them, press the thumbs up under the videos, I guess, if you think my videos deserve it. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. And here comes the outtakes. I have to go through this like every time I set this up. Right. Okay. I would need another... No, it's pointing upwards. Just to... I just want to get... Alright. Yeah, now it looks good. Okay, if I raise the chair... Does that... Okay, I'm gonna make a square out of it anyway, so it's gonna be good. Right, so now we have to get the light right. Ow. Why would I care that there's a big red dot on my nose? So, let's just... That's too dark. And anytime now, someone's gonna start drilling in the wall again. They keep drilling the damn walls. What is there left to drill? They've been drilling so much, I can't even imagine there is anything resembling a wall down there. Huh? Come on, just... What about if I... Can I move a bit, maybe? Come on! This is a great beginning of the day. I have a feeling that this is gonna be a long video and I really need to get this recorded now. This angle doesn't look good. That's too low. That's too high. My backdrop is falling over again. So if I just... I'm actually gonna have to get out of my chair to do this. Is that good? That looks beautiful. Oh no! One more time. Too low. Okay, that's a good height. And then maybe get the microphone. Wait. Ooh, that's... Oh, that looks good. All right. Do your thing, camera. I look really pale. I'll just have to start over again.